What up, good people? It's your man Sub saying, you know what time it is. It's that time when I just speak my mind about, what's happening around me. And what caught my attention this week was a very interesting program called Black Conversations. I think it's sponsored by Castle Milk Stout, and you can find it on Mzansi Magic. It's a very interesting program about just media personalities of all kinds coming together and sitting in a sort of like round table discussion, talking. There's no table, well, it's just a round, I guess, circle, whatever. Obviously, a circle is round, but you know what I'm saying, man. They're just sitting around and discussing black issues. Uh, and by black issues, I'm talking about anything from spirituality to economics to environment to just the stereotypes that black people are usually associated with. And this week they were talking about spirituality. Not this week, but the first two episodes that I saw. And there's Joshua Maponga there, and I think this was the first two episodes were the most emotional because they were touching on a very sensitive subject of spirituality and African spirituality as we know it today. Um, and I just like the thing, what caught my attention about it is the fact that I saw myself in the conversation, and I saw just how much of a big deal spirituality is to us, and how much potential it has, to destroy us or to separate us or to break us as a people. And so, it got me thinking real hard, to say, oh my God, I've been having this conversation with my friends for such a long time because we all have contrasting views as far as spirituality is concerned, simply because we are different. We are all different. Some are Zulu, some are Xhosa, some are Tswana, you know, some have fathers, some don't. Some were not really raised in an African centric, ideology. Some were Christian, and some are basically mixing both. So there's a very difficult, I think, thing about just a spiritual conversation when it comes to black people of any kind, because there's all of these contrasting views. There's a spectrum of them, and so I mean across the spectrum basically, and then I realize just how important it is. I think Biko was right. I mean, Biko said in his book, "I write what I like," that we have a spiritual hunger, that African people have a spiritual hunger, and therefore that spiritual hunger leaves them vulnerable to attacks, to spiritual attacks or just psychological attacks, where black people are, are are finding themselves lost in spiritual discourse and without any conclusion, because it's not like African spirituality has a manual like Christianity has, or like Islam or the Jewish religion with the Torah, or the Bhagavad Gita of the Indians. I hope I said the Bhagavad Gita right. I don't know if I said it right, but you get what I'm saying. And so there's these contrasting views across like a spectrum where people are just battling with the idea of a spirituality, but we cannot really box it into anything, or we cannot say we have a central view of it, like maybe a Quran. Obviously, even within those religions, there are fractions and there are disagreements as far as analysis of scriptural analysis is concerned, but at least they have a reference point, and so they can argue based off that reference point. But with African spirituality, it's really difficult because all cultures have a different practice, or spiritual, I guess, ritual based off maybe location. You can be closer but be from a different location, and so your closer ritual will be different, and it will change with your location or just the tribe, because there are like sub tribes within the tribes themselves. So, and but you know, my take home was the fact that this confusion, you know, in us trying to have these discussions, we don't reach any conclusion, because I don't think there's any conclusion, because spirituality, as it is for me, it's an individualized experience that one has, and it varies across, you know. Even Marcus Garvey said this. He said there are as many Christianities as Christians, because every Christian has their own analysis of what Christianity is, and so it's different. Because if you have like 1,000 churches in one community, those churches all practice a Christianity, but that Christianity on its own is different. And I'm just making an example with Christianity. This applies to all religions or spiritual systems, both African and Western. Um, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, in these contrasting views, we lose ourselves and we forget the important thing, the significant things, which is our well-being, first of all, economically, you know, to get rid of poverty. And then we have to have access to assets and be able to compete on on a world stage, you know, be able to bounce ideas with the world and have at least a seat at the table globally. When you speak about just, you know, global politics, which Africans lack, because we have nothing much to offer. And the reason why I'm pointing out this particular Black Conversations episode, which was like episode 1 and 2, where Joshua Maponga is that it was the most emotionally charged. You know, emotions were very invested in this one. And I just saw how easily it can get for, you know, for us to judge each other based off what we believe in. Um, I don't think the spiritual systems are a problem. I think we should allow people to practice whatever they believe in, because then we are going to have a problem. You're going to have a Tswana arguing with a Xhosa, a Zulu arguing with a Pedi arguing with a Ndebele, you know. But if we leave people to practice how they practice and then have a commonality, a common ground with that, which I think is what the ANC recognized and saw during you know, those times and the negotiations between them and the white government, and you know, us getting to a point whereby we have a black ruling class, that was obviously the ANC government. They saw that, you know, we had a commonality, and that commonality was to find peace and harmony. And you know, everyone wants to have peace of mind. Everybody wants to have dignity in their lives, and so they didn't take sides. That's what made the ANC win. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a side, because we are already all black people. So I'm saying that we need to find commonalities as a black people. For instance, we all know that we all need, you know, a dignified, you know, living. We need to have access to employment, to economic opportunities and whatnot. And so that's number one. We all share that uh, similarity or commonality. And the next one is that we need land. We need access to land and resources, and obviously information, education, and whatever. Access to just to a dignified life, basically. We all have that common interest, and that common interest could be the thread that holds us together if we focus on those things, because then the religious or the spiritual conversation, it will. And so we need to find another way to relate to each other, so that we don't have these meaningless conflicts on who believes what and who doesn't, because at the end of the day, um, we are being infiltrated because of, you know, that divide and conquer concept and idea that, yeah, we have been taught about for all these years. We need to find commonality and work towards that, and I feel like our most of our problems will go away. And that's the take home for me from that conversation, is that I saw myself, and how easily it can lead to you trying to change the other person, you know, as opposed to just accepting them as they are, you know, and leaving them to be who they want to be. You know, as long as they don't really affect you directly, then it doesn't matter. We need to find a commonality as a people to work together and respect each other, you know, regardless of what you believe in, or regardless of what you believe in. I don't know if the word regardless still exists, but regardless of what you believe in, the common ground should be set there, and there should be a constitution, like a black constitution, where black people abide by that constitution. We don't have to call it a Bible. We can call it a constitution, because like a constitution is almost like a Bible. Um, so we can have that black constitution that tells us how we abide by those laws and rules. And if you break out of those rules and you forget yourself, then we can deal with you according to that black constitution. And every black person has to abide by it, because then we'll have a commonality, and it should have an aim in sight to say, okay, this is what we are trying to work towards, this is what we are trying to achieve, and so this is what we need to do. um, and with that said, I think we will solve a lot of our problems and leave each other alone, because I think spirituality is a very complex conversation to have, because every spiritual experience is individualized, and therefore you cannot really measure it, scale it, or have a logical theory drawn out of it to say, okay, you can apply these, particular spiritual things to achieve 1, 2, 3. And yeah, I think it's mutually based on faith and how much you believe in your rituals. Um, as opposed to saying, "Oh, this is the way and the truth, and this is the light, and everything else outside of what I believe in is not the one." And if we're going to try to solve our spiritual problems first, I think we're going to spend the next 500 years trying to do that, and I don't think we're going to get anywhere, because I think when we have these conversations, usually it's not really to find, the solutions, but it's to enforce what we individually believe in on other people, or to enforce it for ourselves. Because usually when you leave these discussions, your convictions are, I even reinforced. It's like you reinforce those convictions. So I think it's like a backward, thing. Like it's pointless. And with that said, I would like to say, let's focus on, what we all share, the common interest that we share, and then move towards that. As far as spirituality, um, let's just, agree to disagree. And with that said, I hope that makes sense. Um, yeah, let's work.